This video is brought to you by Skiet and Cape Film Supply. What's up gang, it's your boy, and after 4 long months I'm finally back with another video, and we've got a really exciting one today because today we're looking at the Pentax 17, a brand new film camera released in 2024. So the generous folks over at Cape Film Supply were kind enough to lend me this camera for a day for the purpose of making this video. And I just want to preface this by saying this is not an in-depth review or anything like that. This is just my first impressions. In fact, I haven't even watched anyone else's YouTube videos on this camera. I wanted to have a fully unbiased opinion going into this. So this is just me pulling the camera out of the box, not reading the instructions, and just sort of sharing my experience with the camera firsthand. So the Pentax 17 is a 35mm half frame film camera, and what that basically means is on a standard 35mm roll of film where you typically get 36 exposures, on a half frame camera you get 72. So how that works is basically the name says it all, it's half frame. So where you would typically have 1 exposure on your 35mm roll of film, you now get 2 in that same space, and there are a few upsides to that, but there are a few downsides as well. And one of the obvious benefits is of course more photos. Who doesn't want more photos? You now get 72 photos before you need to change a roll of film. For me personally, it takes me quite a while even just to get through 36 exposures. So I did have to sort of rush myself a little bit to get through 72 photographs in one day. But having 72 photographs is really great because you don't have to change your film as often. And if you're going out, you don't want to carry a bunch of film with you. You take what? Put 1 roll in the camera and take 1 spare with you, and you've got a ton of photographs to take. And another cool thing about the Pentax 17 is that it actually shoots vertical. So you don't need to turn the camera sideways to shoot for Instagram or anything like that. You literally hold the camera and shoot, and the images that it takes are in fact vertical, which is awesome for me because I shoot pretty much only vertical. But like with all pros, there must be cons. And one of the disadvantages of using a half frame camera is the fact that you have half the resolution and twice the grain. So one thing to remember when you are shooting a half frame camera is that you want to use a film stock with quite a fine grain, because whatever the grain structure is on that film, it's essentially going to be double. So if you're shooting Portra 800, which is already super grainy in 35mm, when you shoot it in half frame, those grain particles are going to be huge and you're going to have super grainy images. So I recommend shooting a fine grain film like Ektachrome, Portra 160, Ektar. Films like that are going to be really good through this camera. And your sort of more grainy films like your Portra 800, your Cinestill 800T, those are going to be a little bit too grainy in my opinion for this, but it could be a vibe. So let's talk a little bit about the camera and the body of the camera. So despite feeling a little bit plasticky, it does feel like it's well made. So the main section is of course plastic, but it does have a magnesium top and bottom, which just gives it a little bit more of a sturdy feel than say a fully plastic camera. So the camera is pretty small, but one of the nice things about it being so small is the fact that you can actually turn the camera on, advance to the next frame, and take a photo all with one hand, which I thought was pretty cool. So despite having an autofocus mode, this is a zone focusing camera, which I'll be honest isn't my favorite, but I gotta say, while I was using the camera, I didn't really have any issues with the zone focusing. I mean, yes, I missed focus a few times, but in terms of ease of use, the markings are pretty clear as to where you're shooting, and it does tell you distance markers on the bottom of the camera as well. So as long as you sort of use your discretion, it's not that hard to use zone focusing, and I hit focus on most of my images, which I was pretty happy with. One thing with the autofocus mode is that I was told that it is basically, when you flip it to autofocus mode, it turns it into like a focus free, like a disposable camera, but it does have a motor on the lens, which makes me think like, is that an autofocus motor? I mean, why else would it have a motor on the lens? So apparently it turns it into a focus free. Like I said, I haven't watched any videos on this camera, so I don't personally know yet, but there is a motor on the lens, which makes me feel like it must have an actual autofocus in there and not just be a focus free when you put it in auto mode. So maybe something to look into. So Analog Cape Town was hosting their monthly film photo walk, and this month's walk was at the Paarl Arboretum, and I thought that would be the perfect place to test out the camera and run a roll through it, and that is exactly what I did. So oftentimes with half frame cameras, you can ask the lab to either scan each frame individually or to scan it on a 35mm frame size where you essentially have 2 photos in one scan. So I was of course shooting a roll of Portra 400, and Portra 400 is known for having pretty fine grain, but even here in these images you can see the grain, because it's essentially doubled. When you blow the image up, it is quite grainy, even in Portra 400. So I want to say another special thank you to Skiet and Cape Film Supply for lending me the camera for a day. It was super cool to get my hands on it and test it out, and now finally I can watch everyone else's videos and see what everyone else has to say about it. But if you want to get your hands on one or you want to rent it for yourself, definitely get in touch with Skiet or Cape Film Supply. They'll hook you up. So I haven't uploaded a video for a while. I think it's been 4 months now. I've just been super busy. I do work a full-time day job as well. And I've also recently been pursuing my other passion project, which is making and recording music. So I'll leave a link to that if you do want to check that out. But I do have a lot of fun film photography ideas in the works. My friend Liam just got back from Germany, and along with this cool Mamiya 7 pin that he brought back for me, he also brought back a roll of Rollei infrared, which is a black and white infrared film, which is super hard to come by in South Africa. I haven't found it anywhere. So I've got a roll of that, which I'm going to be making a video about as well. And yeah, I've got a lot of really cool ideas in the works, so stick around. I'm going to try my best to upload as often as I can. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. What do you think of the Pentax 17? Have you tried one yourself? And yeah, if you're new, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.